In the summer of 2013, the majority of New Mexico's community mental health agencies was shut down by the Martinez administration, alleging they were guilty of fraud. Arizona companies were brought in to take over. 1 year later, the fraud allegations remain unproven, and the entire mental health system has been seriously compromised, affecting many vulnerable New Mexicans.
It's easier just to die than it is to get help.
Some of these children have committed suicide.
They shot to kill, not to disarm.
The whole community is reeling from it.
People are afraid of what's going on.
I am traveling down a rocky road, just struggling to find my way. The place I'm headed I may never find, 'cause they pulled the trigger in my mind.
Hi, I'm Stephen Michael Casada. This state is a kaleidoscope of cultures and a land of breathtaking beauty. But too many are suffering from behavioral health issues such as substance abuse, addiction, and mental illness. And unfortunately, at this critical time, we have witnessed a breakdown of our behavioral health system. It has affected services and triggered fear and anguish among many of our most vulnerable families.
I think what's happened in behavioral health in New Mexico, instead of taking a step up, I think it's taken a step down and a step backwards.
Over the course of time, since 1998, services are fewer, and the network is weaker, and it's probably weakest now that it's been since 1998.
We were given a letter basically indicating that we were all guilty of, at the very least, terrible overbilling, but probably some kind of fraud.
I think we've put many of our good providers out of business. These are New Mexico businesses. When we brought in Arizona people.
Keep in mind that they were brought in because supposedly an audit had projected $36 million in alleged fraudulent payments. So the state turned around and spent $24 million to bring in the Arizona firms. And then that doesn't include the $3 million that they'd spent to pay PCG for its questionable audit. All of that came out of the state's general budget. That's $27 million that we've spent to put New Mexico behavioral health providers out of business for fraud that hasn't even been proven.
There was no time that the agencies were allowed to see what they were accused of, face their accusers, defend themselves, and, save their reputations.
The state has always said we had no choice but to do this once the allegations of fraud were made. And the truth is they had other options and chose not to use them.
Where are we going with this ultimately? What if Arizona providers pick up shop and leave town? Where are we then? And so I think we haven't moved forward at all. I think we've done a thing of trying to prove fraud and criminal activity, and I don't think it's been proved.
I do not believe that any of the people that fronted this was going to undertake shutting down basically almost the whole behavioral health system in this state without approval from the boss. I can't imagine that.
This nation has never really recovered from the deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill in the 20th century. The state's shutdown of behavioral health providers comes at a time when there are 10 times more mentally ill Americans in prisons and in jails than in the state psychiatric hospitals. And when they are released from incarceration, they are often sicker than when they went in.
Caleb, when he was 14, 15 years old, started going through adolescent changes. Actually, he was going into the condition that he now has, which is, for the most part, schizophrenia. When he's 18 years old, he went over to a friend of his house to get an Atari game set he wanted to watch. And the grandfather, who was raising this child, by the way, the kid, didn't want Caleb to take the Atari set because the child, his kid, wasn't there to agree or say yes. Caleb picked a knife up off the counter, his kitchen counter, and stabbed the gentleman multiple times.
I couldn't believe what I'm hearing. It's just Caleb, but what I'm hearing, they hurt someone, they stabbed him. I didn't raise him that way.
They couldn't try him. That's just how ill-behaved he was. So through the court order, they put him to Las Vegas Mental Hospital. He was in the hospital for almost 7 months. They brought him back to Valencia County, again for trial. Couldn't try him. They just couldn't try this lad. Our local authorities just took the lot, unlocked his cell, and put him on the street. Now keep in mind, he was incarcerated at 18. He was released when he was 22. Is that right, Mom? Mm-hmm. 22 years old. And he struggled to find his house. But he made it. And here he's been ever since.
When he gets back here and starts going to Valle del Sol, he was supposed to be in their day program 5 days a week. Well, then that was cut back to 4 days a week. A one-time visit from the case manager, and that was it from the 1st of February on. So they had no services at all.
And when I have a 6-foot concrete wall, which I'm having built now, I just finished the back end, which is the southern end, and the only way in and out of this property is through my front gate. And it itself is 6 foot. So I did that primarily so that if Caleb would have, say, a bad day, which we all do. We all have bad moments. We all do. But what makes everyone different is everyone has controls. Same way with a person who has a mental problem or a mental disorder. They have a bad day just like we all do, but they don't have the controls to control it. And when I put this wall up, it's not to keep people out. It's to keep my son out of harm's way. I don't want him to be out here and the police are summoned. Police not knowing what they're going to do with what they've got could take the alternate and shoot him. And that is what we do not want.
I had some help from someone kind who would catch me when I'd start to fall. Somehow they knew my mind was wandering through the shades and the shadows through it all.
I think that understanding mental illness is a very difficult thing to do, and I have to say it was difficult for my family. I have a grandson that's schizophrenic and bipolar.
And the thing that makes me absolutely crazy is that the jails in the state have been the biggest providers of mental health services for a long time. And with this crisis that we're in, it's making it even more.
We're treating very often people with mental illness as criminals. They may do some criminal acts, but are they doing criminal acts because they're not getting the kinds of services that they need in order to stabilize themselves?
From kindergarten all the way to high school, Lawrence was never in trouble with the law. This is from the Honorable George Bush for an outstanding academic and excellent student. And one day, it happens a lot to a lot of people. He wasn't Lawrence anymore. He was totally a different person. And I took him to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. It was Easter Sunday. And Lawrence had an episode into where he's been incarcerated for this episode now for reasons that he couldn't control. He had been begging and begging for med changes, and he just pushed me, and it turned into not a very good, nice thing. I called the police because I couldn't control him. He'd called the police on himself 2 days prior, and he's in jail. And I think that he shouldn't be there because he needs to be in a place where he's going to get help. He needs to get on the right medications, and he wasn't. And he was yearning for help. He was like, please help me. The system that they switched to destructed my son's life even more than it was already. Everything should have been left as it was prior to La Frontera coming in. The nurse would give him the meds, and then different people would just come over and give him meds, different kind of meds, to the point where he couldn't get up or eat, or he was just very neglected to the point where he's already lost his home. And I could only do so much as a mother, as a woman. And I'm strong. Southwest Counseling was always there. I could pick up the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, Miss Wallace, which is Laura Wallace, that was the actor and director of the ACT ACT program. She'd pick up the phone at 2 in the morning, where this new company, the ACT, would never call me back unless my son was, when it was just literally too late. He's been incarcerated for over a month and a half now, and I went to the district attorneys, and they were really nice with me. And hopefully I might be able to see him for my birthday on Friday, and I'm looking forward to it. This is what my son was, and this is what I want my son to be again.
Community mental health centers have served as safety nets for thousands of New Mexicans for many years. Cultural competency and trust are crucial factors in the service delivery, especially in rural areas. The shutdown of provider agencies that have served these areas for generations and their replacements with firms from another state and a different culture have had a profound effect on many New Mexico communities.
The state didn't have a very good transition plan in place. Had a provider gone out of business, the provider itself would have had to develop a transition plan to assure that every single person was cared for properly and services continued. The state uprooted 15 providers and didn't have a transition plan.
A lot of the professionals left. They quit. They're fearful of what New Mexico is doing with behavioral health. They're afraid of their licenses. They aren't being treated very well.
It was a very hostile environment. They came in with promises, and you're all going to be hired back on again. But then after the transition, it had all changed to, oh, we're admin heavy, or if you said the wrong thing, then you were gone. You were gone.
We just heard Monday of this week, and today's only Wednesday, Monday of this week, that La Frontera that took over service provision in the South, they took over Southwest Counseling Services, laid off 87 staff people. And we have no idea how many of those are clinicians, how many of those are administrators or support personnel. We don't know because nobody's talking.
We started out before the transition about 130 clients. After transition, I would say it was probably about 105, 110 clients. So there was a few clients that we had lost during the transition. Overall, I know in Los Lunas there was over 900 clients, and now to date there's about 350. Where they went, I don't know.
I worked for Agave for one paycheck, and I got one paycheck and was so sick to the stomach that I decided I cannot earn another paycheck from this firm. I found it morally objectionable, morally questionable, and I had to stop.
I do know that medication management within our mental health system is suffering. I do know that clients that have transitioned with these companies are still waiting for psych evals, and they are not receiving the services. We have had triage level 1 clients which are clients fresh out of the hospital being turned away.
There needs to be some accountability on, what is the impact on clinical service? Because under federal law, they're required to have an adequate provider network, and that service is to be provided with reasonable promptness. Those are the federal buzzwords. And in New Mexico, the promise is if you have an emergency that you're seen in 2 hours, if you have an urgent need, you're seen in 24 hours, and for behavioral health care, if you have a regular appointment, you should have one in 2 weeks.
We forged a bond that would never break. They lift me up when I call. We talk it through and work it out, and they stand with me through it all, through it all.
What happens with individuals with mental illness is they will become silent and they'll disengage from the treatment that they've already been undergoing.
People are moving away from services. And, I have gone away from seeing my psychiatrist to only seeing my general practitioner. I no longer see a therapist.
You cannot have a massive disruption in care of this magnitude and not expect to see what is occurring now. People have disengaged. And once you disengage, it takes years to bring you back in to appropriate care and trust issues.
It's easier for me just to die than it is to get help.
I had a therapist, and I had to stop seeing that therapist. It was not really all that pleasant.
We've got a Indian hospital here in Albuquerque, but they're cutting funds and all that stuff, and a lot of natives just sort of ignore it because they'll just deal with the pain themselves, and it's not easy.
One day, I showed up to my counselor's office and found out that she's no longer there. And I got devastated over it because I was going through so much.
And I've had to learn to adjust. And now they're punishing me yet again because of the crap that I didn't want is now, okay, you're stable, so we're going to just let you go.
About 20% of the U.S. population suffer from some form of serious mental illness during their lifetime, but they comprise almost 40% of homeless population. In a recent survey of chronically homeless people in New Mexico, 3 out of every 5 report being assaulted while living on the streets. One of those fatal shootings happened on the same lot where 2 homeless Native American men were beaten to death this summer, a case in which both victims and perpetrators may have been mentally ill.
But someone severed that bond. They cut it through with a knife. Don't know how, and I don't know why. I just know that it's gone and it changed my life.
There's plenty of anecdotal evidence that points again and again to shootings and to suicides and to things that have been elevated since this takeover occurred.
We don't need any more Mr. Boyds being killed. I think that was a tragedy and a travesty. Why the CIT people weren't called in to try and deal with Mr. Boyd. Our police have good training.
Did the police do the shooting? Yes, but what put him up on that hill? What disrupted his services to the point that he had no place to go and that he was up on the hill?
There's a lot of people that say, you're normal. you're homeless, that's your own damn fault, you know. But a lot of people out here do have mental issues. I sleep outside sometimes, and I do move around a lot because if you got a camp, you don't want people to really know about it, you know.
There have been over 30 police shootings in New Mexico in the recent past, and many of the victims who were acting out were mentally ill. And so, those families who've been struggling with the reality of mental illness are sometimes also faced with the imprisonment or even death of a loved one.
When the behavioral health providers were shut down in Rio Arriba County, there was a tremendous amount of disruption.
Early in the morning of June 8th, Sunday morning, I got a text from Victor. He was spending the night at a friend's in Espanola, saying, "Please bring me clothes for the party." I texted him back saying, "We'll be there soon, we're running a little bit late." And then Mary pulled up to a crime scene.
And the state policeman came over and said, "Who was your son?" And I said, "Victor Villalpando." And they said, "Yes, he was involved in the incident. He's at Espanola Hospital." They let me in, and then I saw my son, and he had a bullet wound right here. Good. Then somebody said, "You can hold his hand." So I held his hand, and his eyes were rolled back, and they were putting blood in as fast as they could, but it barely looked like he was breathing. And I don't know how long later they came and said, "We're sorry, we couldn't save him. The bullet obliterated his liver." And
he bled out.
And he bled out.
We were told that, and we're able to hear part of the tape, that he made a 911 phone call on himself saying, "There's a kid acting crazy. He almost got hit by a car. Please come help." And saying that he had a gun, but he didn't know if it was a toy or not. And my understanding, and I've seen pictures, is that he had a toy gun. We have not seen any tape to see whether he pulled a gun or not. But what I know is that, what I was told is that 2 officers and a public safety aide, 3 adult men, confronted a 16-year-old with a karate stick. They got him to throw down the stick. They were frisking him, and then supposedly he either gestured or pulled a gun, we don't know, and they shot him. And they shot to kill, not to disarm, and he died.
And that's a mental health problem.
And our son was a struggling 16-year-old.
He was born addicted to drugs through no fault of his own because his mother was using substances. And the very first thing that he did in life was kick that habit. And he overcame a lot of challenges. He was adopted, he overcame many challenges, and he was an incredibly talented boy and a leader in our community.
There wasn't any reason to die. None of it makes sense to me, and it never will.
It's easy when someone with such a huge heart wants to give so much to other people. It's easy then to forget about your own self.
One of the projects we were working on were training police and security guards in the schools as to how you effectively deal with youth, especially youth in crisis. As soon as the announcement came and these providers were shut down, all of that came to a screeching halt because we had a number of committees that were working on it. Nobody was at the table anymore. All of the providers were let go, all of the individuals who were helping me with that project. So we just stopped doing it.
The heart of our behavioral health system has been carved out and transferred to Arizona firms that cost us $27 million to bring here. And they're conducting layoffs because they aren't making enough money. So we're spending more money and helping fewer human beings.
the fact that Susana Martinez has done what she's done to our state, all I can say to you, Susana Martinez, is shame on you.
There is a serious misunderstanding of what mental illness really is by the leadership. And that is very, very scary and irresponsible.
I think that trauma is at the root of much behavioral health illness. And so to bring in a whole new system and force people into a whole new way of doing things just forced more trauma upon people.
I'm not exactly sure why this happened. I wish we had our Woodward and Bernstein. I think if you follow the money, there might be a story there.
The only thing I can think of is that she wanted to be the #1 prosecutor of fraud in the United States.
As far as I'm concerned, it was politically motivated. It couldn't have been something that was done for the people of New Mexico, because the people of New Mexico were taken out of the equation and some people from Arizona were brought into it.
A lot of people in northern New Mexico voted for the governor when she ran because she was a Hispanic woman who seemed to care about their concerns, their needs, their problems. They're the ones who now are going without services. They're the ones whose kids can't get in to see a doctor, can't get in to see the counselor that was working with them. They're the ones whose relatives are going without the alcohol or drug treatment that's so badly needed.
We're not looking at this as it wasn't just a loss of a job, it was a loss of a community. We lost cherished and valued members. Some of these children have committed suicide. I lost a very dear friend of mine who experienced such injustices due to a heroin overdose when she was turned away from a local homeless shelter in Albuquerque. If we don't have available supports for these individuals to go, they do not stand a chance in this lifetime. There will be no hope for them unless you reinstill the hope that we had already established as a community.
Congratulations, we're out of business. Congratulations, there are hundreds of people without jobs now in New Mexico. Congratulations. Congratulations, there's thousands of mentally ill without services. Congratulations. And now, do all you can to destroy these people's reputations. Congratulations. My question is, why? Why? Why did you do this?
This year's state budget contains a $50 million increase for behavioral health, much of it from a federal match. That will mean more money, but fewer lives will be helped, because the lion's share will go to big corporate managed care companies. We need to get more resources onto ground zero, where there's a crucial need for outreach, case management, day programs, peer counseling, and drop-in centers, because that is where the people are. Grassroots and community-based programs are what the old system was all about, and they actually saved money. The choice is ours.
Now I'm back on that rocky road, through the shades and the shadows. The place I'm headed I may never find, 'cause they pulled the trigger in my mind. Yes, they pulled the trigger in my mind.
Vulnerable New Mexicans need our help. Call Governor Martinez, 505-476-2200. Tell her to restore the comprehensive behavioral health services that she shut down in our communities last year.